About some of the stress in our lives. And I'm going to share a story of sort of a regular day in the life of me as a product manager, which is that I start the morning and my CTO forwards me an email that a friend of his or an investor has reported a bug. And this email says, like, where did this bug come from? How long have we known about it? Have we known about it? How many people is it affecting? And why did we release with it? Why is there a bug? Can we fix this now? Because this guy's really important, okay? And I'm like, okay, like, so pause whatever I'm doing, right? I investigate a little bit, or I find the ticket, and I'm starting to dig into this. And then somebody from marketing comes up to me, and they're like, hey, Jenny, how are you? And I'm like, uh-oh. And they're like, we've got this opportunity for a great PR event. It's in 3 weeks. The only thing we need in order to actually get this event to work out is to add this little thing with the promo codes that changes this thing, so our flow's a little bit different, and if we then do this and but it only needs to be applied to these people. And I'm like, in 3 weeks, you say? And she's like, yeah, do you think we can get that done? And I'm like, oh goodness, okay, so bug goes to the side, and here I am now researching our promo code flow and trying to figure out what's going on there and if this is actually something we can do or not. And the day goes by, and there's these interruptions and all of this stuff, and I realized that the one thing I had meant to do that day was to schedule user research, right? This is stress in our product lives, and this is normal. This is, I think, something hopefully you have all experienced at least one day in your lives. These squeaky wheels come up, they ask for your attention, they want your priority, they want your time, and it's really, really hard, and it causes so much stress to be dealing with them constantly, and then it causes additional stress to say no. So let's start with a quick quiz, a little self-assessment here. And I'm not going to do the raise your hands thing. I'm not so into that. But just take a second to think about this. Do you agree with this statement? Are you clear about what your top priority is for your product? Think about this in time horizons, right? Maybe you've got more clarity on the short term versus the long term, or maybe it's vice versa, that short term is a little bit fuzzy, but you know where you're trying to go. What about your team? Right? Also think, we've got horizons, we've also got for the big things and the little things, right? The bugs versus the grand features. How clear is your team? How do they feel about it? What about your leadership? And thinking through this, what's the data you have in your life to know whether or not they're aligned with you and whether everybody knows what the priority is? And then the hard one. Yeah, it's really hard, right? I got a couple laughs there because this is why we're here, right? We need to prioritize because there's never enough. I came to this realization that we're all bound by the space-time continuum. We cannot be in two places at once. We cannot have more than 24 hours in a day. Even if you work at a place where you have an unlimited budget, so you can hire as many people as you'd like and do as much as you possibly can without anybody ever telling you, hold on, we don't have people or we don't have anything for that, you are still bound by the space-time continuum. We can only work on one thing at a time. And the squeaky wheels come up because they say, hey, I want a share of the resources. I want a share of the goodies here. And we can't always say yes, right? But what are they actually asking when they come to us looking for these resources? What do they actually want? They're asking this question. Why aren't you fixing my problem? And we as product managers, the first thing we need to do is have a lot of empathy for them. Thinking about a recent experience of mine, we switched our customer support software, so the thing that does the routing of calls to call into our customer heroes. We went from one company to another. And the customer success operations manager came to me. And he said, Jenny, the one thing that I need from you, we've got all of this on our end, except that we need a new SDK in our app so that we can send information into our heroes so that when they answer the phone, instead of going, oh, who are you and where are you, they can say, hey, Jenny, I see that you're parking in Cleveland and that you've got a reservation coming up in an hour. How can I help you? And that difference, one, it's a tremendous customer experience that we can offer, but also his success is judged by average handle time. From when the customer hero answers the phone to when they hang up, how long does it take? The shorter it is with being able to still solve the customer's problem, the better it is for everybody, and that's how he is judged. And I had to turn to him and I had to say, listen, I can't get this done right now because I've got these other things on my list. I have to tell you no, and that we're going to look at it later. And it hurt, because what I was actually saying to him is, I can't fix your problem, and not only that, I'm going to make it harder for you to get to your KPIs and to be successful in your job. As product managers, we have this magic ability to help our customers, our partners, our coworkers to solve their problems, but we can't solve them all at once. And so prioritization really matters, because it allows us to give a better answer. Instead of saying, no, I can't do this right now, it's, this is where this is at, and here's why. And it allows us to have more empathy for them. And by putting in a good prioritization system, we can create that empathy also back towards us a little bit, where there's a bit more perspective on, we're saying no to you because we have to say yes to somebody else, and we're trying to juggle all of these different things. So, we all do already use a prioritization system, right? Back to that space-time continuum thing. We're working on one thing. We all prioritized being here. Thank you. And the challenge is that most of the systems that we use right now are reactive. Squeaky wheel is a perfect example of that, right? Hippo, whatever shows up in your inbox. All of these systems, they're reactive. You take what the world throws at you, and you hope you can, you're like, okay, I'm in here. We're just going for it, guys. We're going to just ride this thing out. That puts you up on your heels. And what I really want to advocate today is, if nothing else, you leave this believing that you actually should be having a proactive system. By being aggressive towards your goals, and by setting clear expectations and making deliberate choices, instead of letting the world throw things at you, you're already going to have better outcomes. You're already going to be able to address those squeaky wheels a little bit better. So, a lot of people, when I do this session, come up to me afterwards and they're like, Jenny, there's so many prioritization systems out there, which one should I choose? And I've got an appendix. It's going to be up with my slides afterwards. They'll be on Twitter. You can find them later. And I've got links where you can read about these and like 500 more. There's no shortage of prioritization systems out there. What I want to tell you today is that which one of these you choose doesn't matter at all, because they're all going to get you into that proactive position. They're all going to get you closer to your goal. And based on where your company is, there might be one that's a little bit better or a little bit worse than where you're at today. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. What does matter? Gaining buy-in. Making sure that those squeaky wheels in your organization believe in your prioritization system, that they feel like they've had a voice in your model in order to have influence over your backlog. And it doesn't mean that they're leading the decisions, right? It's still a collaboration, it's still a conversation. But by gaining buy-in, by making sure everybody feels equally involved in your prioritization process, they then can't be your squeaky wheel. They have to be a squeaky wheel to the whole company, or they have to actually start talking about the process itself. So how did we do that at SpotHero? We started off by talking about what I call sort of our business pillars. And these are things where they drive how your company makes decisions. And based on your company and your style and your culture, one of these is going to lead and the others are still going to be on the list. But as I go through them, think about it and think about which ones are how you're going to stack rank them, right? Which one leads, which ones sort of follow. The first is resources. So this might be that you are at a bootstrapped startup, and if you don't get a paying customer within the next 30 days, you're not making payroll. That's a resource constraint, and you should probably be prioritizing based on that. It could also be something like if you are trying to do a lot of predictive analytics or predictive algorithms, and it's really hard to hire machine learning engineers. You're going to have to prioritize based on who you can get in the door and how you can get the support you need for your goals. Strategic alignment is one that I see more often at big companies. So this is where there's the overall strategic goal, and then all of the different teams have cascading goals underneath it. Maybe there's another layer, and if the company gets really big, there's yet another layer. But whatever the case may be, the important thing is that what each product is doing falls in to the piece above it, which falls in and which falls into the pyramid. We have business outcomes. So this is for companies where you say, we are just going for this revenue target. This is where we're headed. Or maybe we want to increase conversion to this point, very KPI driven. And finally, customer needs. This is often seen at companies where you say, listen, all we want to do right now is get users. We're going to figure out monetization later. We're aiming for an exit, whatever the case may be. But the primary focus right now is customer needs. And right, there's no company out there that's like, hey, we're going to go after revenue and screw our customers. Right? They're all going to be taking their own place in the lineup. And so which one matches your company? Turns out, for us at SpotHero, we're very targeted towards those business outcomes. Based on where we are at this moment in time, that's what we're spending a lot of our effort talking about. And so when I had this conversation with our leadership, it became very clear very quickly, like, okay, this is the direction we're headed. And so after that, I got stakeholders for my product in a room, and I said, hey, what are our product goals? What are we trying to achieve right now? And I stood up there with my marker, and I took down the list. And all of my main squeaky wheels were in the room, or somebody who represented for them, and we came up with a very long list. And the stress levels, I'm like, oh goodness, they're coming up again. And I took a deep breath, right? I was like, this is the moment where you say yes, right? Every single goal that goes up on that board, you say, yes, that's a great goal. We should be targeting that. We should be going after that. But what happens if we have two things that are competing? We've got an idea that's really going to focus on being a market leader and maximizing our innovation, or we've got something that could raise the lifetime value of our customers. Which one should we do? And they looked around, they're like, oh, lifetime value, right? Like, that's more important right now. And it's like, okay, great. What about customer satisfaction versus growing supply? Oh, for that customer satisfaction for your product. So we had this conversation and slowly crossed them off the list until we came down to two goals. And we started talking just about conversion and SEO. And it was agreed that, at least for now, that's where we're going to be. Notice I haven't used the word prioritization yet with this group, right? We're taking this very slowly because it's about the buy-in. It's about making sure everybody's aligned. So now, finally, I said, thanks, guys. I went back to my desk. I read all those articles on the frameworks. I learned about them. I dissected what the differences were between them and started to think a lot about what our company values, right, and what our stakeholders might be interested in. I leaned more towards the quantitative than the qualitative models because we're very business outcome driven, and the way we like to talk, having clear numbers assigned to things was going to just go over much better. And then I also thought about our market maturity, right? Depending on, there's models out there that are going to be better if you are in a well-established market and you're disrupting it versus you are in a well-established market that you're trying to grow versus if you don't yet have product market fit. There's different models out there for every single kind of company. And so those are the two things that I really kept in mind as I was choosing a framework. And finally, I figured out which one I thought was going to be best for us to use, and I went back to this team. I said, hey, I think this is the direction we should go. This is the framework we should use. Turns out that while we really love to geek out about frameworks, nobody else in my company does. I was shocked, but they were all like, yeah, that sounds good. And I'm like, you don't want to read about Moscow too? Because it's really cool. Like, there's all these things you can do with it. And they're like, no. So turns out presenting the framework itself was the simplest part. But the next step was the most important part overall. We customized it. The framework we chose had the concept of impact. And we looked around and we're like, we don't know what impact actually means, but our goals are SEO and conversion. So we erased impact and we split it up into two columns and we put in SEO and conversion. And we did this across every single category that was in this model. We then thought about the weightings and said, okay, so do we want it to be 50-50 SEO conversion? Should it actually be more in one direction or the other? What if something's really hard to build versus something really easy? We continued to fiddle with the model to shape everything. And so we got to weightings that really aligned across the board. And then we took the definitions of all of these things as well. This model had small, medium, and large, and we said, well, what's a small conversion versus a medium conversion? And everybody's like, I don't know. So we clarified it, right? We defined that it's over 1 month, right? It's over a certain time period, and small is going to be this many basis points, medium this many basis points. We made sure it was crystal clear. And this was also a point where I took this around the organization a fair bit, and I talked to a whole bunch of other stakeholders, and I made sure that everybody felt like they had a voice, and everybody felt like their fingerprint was on this model. That it wasn't something that product came up with and then was imposing on everybody else. I wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, every single person in the room could say, we came up with this together. And that was the most important thing that I think happened in order to make sure we were aligned and to gain buy-in. So, finally, if you know, it's a couple of days later from when we started this whole process, at least, we got to prioritize. Put everything in the list, and this was my moment to say yes, right? Any idea that anyone had come up with, anything that had come out of my user research, every single thing went into this list. Somebody would come up with something new that we had never thought about before, and I was like, yes, let's pop it in there. And we scored everything, and then we ranked it, right? Like, so here's the high-scoring things, here's the low-scoring things, and we said, how does this look? How does this feel? And somebody's like, well, I don't think that this one should be higher than that one, right? Because if you think about this, we had that conversation. And so went back to that customization page, right? Fiddled with the ratings, fiddled with the weightings, the definitions, ran the model again. Iterated on this a couple of times until we got to a point where the list was in an order where everybody's like, yeah, this is feeling good. This is feeling real nice, guys. And so now all of a sudden, we had alignment. And nobody was fighting. Like, some people's stuff fell to the bottom of the list. And they were okay with it because they understood why. They understood what had happened, what got us to that point. And so now, something else comes up, a squeaky wheel comes in, whatever it may be. I try to get it into this prioritization model. And I can now have an answer. And I can say, hey, well, our model says that this is probably not actually our top priority right now. This isn't where we should be focusing. Or sometimes I get to say, yeah, you're totally right. This is something we should be moving faster on, and I'm going to see what we can do. Now, though, when that conversation happens, it's no longer, well, Jenny's right, or Jenny said no. It's about the model. And if there's a disagreement, I say, well, what's wrong in our model, right? What did we build out? Where did we miss something? Do we need to add? Do we need to change? How should we alter the system? And it's a much easier conversation, right? I get to say yes so much more frequently now because of this. And it's not perfect, right? Lo and behold, that if we do everything just targeting SEO and conversion, there's going to be a couple of major issues where we miss the mark. And so we still need the ability to override our system. We still need the ability to veto. But I use it very, very wisely, because if you override your system too frequently, you're right back where you started at the beginning, and you've lost all of that goodwill. So sometimes, instead, as we've iterated on it, it's like, okay, so we have sort of the override category called the must-dos. And it takes a lot for something to be in there, but we do make sure that the model has space for it as much as possible. And so with that, just remember, it's really important to bring everybody along, and there's 4 key steps to it. Know your goals. Make sure that everybody on the team is aware of what you're trying to achieve and why. Present your options. Come in to your frameworks with a plan in place. Know what you're trying to get to and why. Customize and then customize some more, and make sure that everybody's got their voice in this. And then finally, prioritize together. Make sure that everybody is in the room at the same time, that they all feel heard, and hopefully this will help quiet the squeaky wheels in your organization. It might not solve all of your problems, but it will help you handle that stress, help you know if you're working on the right thing at the right time, and hopefully lead to better outcomes for your product. So with that, thank you guys very much. Inspiration from Gib earlier. I will be posting a survey to Twitter after this, so if you would take a few seconds and go and give me some feedback, that would be wonderful, because as product managers, we are always hungry for customer feedback. And I hope to see you all around at the rest of the conference.